This episode of the RealAg Radio podcast is brought to you by the BC Centre for Agritech Innovation at Simon Fraser University. Are you ready to grow your farm business with cutting-edge technologies and innovative solutions? Our centre will drive you towards an advanced future. Get the investment, expertise, and support you need to test and develop your products or ideas through our Agritech Development Program. Google SFU Agritech Innovation to learn more.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Friday edition of the show. Hey, thanks so much for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday. Also, of course, as always, a big shout out to everybody listening out there on the RealAg Radio podcast. So no matter where you are, Canada, the U.S., or beyond, it is great to have you a part of our program. It's Friday today, which means we're going to have a RealAg Issues Panel. We got Dave Carey here from the CCGA, the Canadian Canola Growers Association. We're not going to talk canola today. We're going to talk about the shenanigans in the Senate when it comes to Bill C-234. Dave has really been on the front lines of this issue. It has been a terrible week for this bill as an amendment passed. An amendment that was actually formally defeated has now passed again. And this bill could be on life support, everybody. So if you thought you're going to get an exemption on your grain drying, on your barn heating, irrigation, we're basically an exemption on any propane or natural gas use on the farm. Sorry to tell you, things are not looking very good here right now, as we've seen some real shenanigans in the Senate. Dave's going to be here to break that down with other panelists, Lyndsey Smith and Kelvin Heppner, both of RealAgriculture. We'll talk about that and a whole lot more as well. We're also going to have a beef market update today, and Wasko's here. What's happening with cattle prices and beef prices, and how concerned about demand should we be in the back end of 23 and as we start to look ahead in 24? And we got a U.S. job report, which basically looks like maybe those cuts aren't going to be coming as quickly as maybe some thought from the Federal Reserve standpoint. There's a lot of stuff to break down here today. This is going to be a fun Friday, absolutely. Well, and be a part of the fun is you interacting and providing your perspectives. You're going to hear from the panelists today. They're going to say their opinions and what they think, and they're going to prognosticate like all panelists do. But what do you think? That's also important. You can send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also, of course, find us across all the social media platforms. Make sure when you stop at YouTube, you subscribe to our YouTube channel, and make sure you check out some of that Agritechnica coverage brought to you by Optimum Gly and Corteva Agriscience. You can also call the RealAg feedback line. That number is 855-776-6147. Hey, big thanks to APAS earlier this week for having me at their AGM in Regina. That was so much fun. That was Wednesday's show. If you did miss it, please go back and have a listen. It was we got some great feedback on that show. It was a lot of fun. Okay, let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to get to the beef market update with the one, the only, and Wasko right after this. It's now time to do a product spotlight with FCC Ag Expert, and we're joined right now by Sarah Boychuk. Let's talk about the role that FCC Ag Expert plays in knowledge transfer amongst the generations on the farm.
So a really good example of that is actually another kid that I've worked with over this last year, Maddie from Learning About Ag with Maddie. She is a 5th generation farmer. She's a grade 5 student, and her family has been using Ag Expert, and they have really used that as a tool to get every generation involved in the farm. So her grandpa, for example, went back and added data about their farm back to 1972, and that data is there for Maddie to use and to learn from. So because Ag Expert is so simple, it's just a great opportunity to get the whole family involved and pass on those principles of farm management from one generation to the next.
That's agexpert.ca.
Through a growing storm of kosher, cleavers, chickweed, and more, there's a clear path Introducing Oxbow, a versatile cereal broadleaf herbicide that gets the job done. Powered by Duplisan technology, Oxbow is your workhorse on resistant kochia and other tough weeds. With flexibility in timing, rates, and recropping options, your path is clear. Find your way on the path of least resistance at newfarm.ca/Oxbow.
Back to RealAg Radio. It's now time for the beef market update with Ann Wasko of the Gateway Livestock Exchange. Ann, how are you doing today on this Friday?
I am good today, Shaun.
That is awesome. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, let's dive in here. There's some stuff happening. I wish that many of our listeners would agree with me. I wish that wasn't the case. What's happening on the cash side here? We're kind of under some pressure, are we not?
Yeah, it's been a tough go here, really, since markets peaked back in September. And so now that we're in December, it's feeling long in the tooth. But we ran the market up so much in the first half of this year. I guess we're certainly paying the price, if you will, today. But markets again this week were down in terms of fat cattle markets on both sides of the border. So let's start in the U.S. in the South, Texas, Kansas, 170 to 171. That's 3 to 4 lower than last week. And a bit of trade dressed up in Nebraska, 267 to 272 delivered dressed, and that's 3 to 6 lower than last week. So pressure there. Same thing when you go back to Western Canada, pretty quiet, not a pile of volume in terms of cash trade. There was a little bit of business at 224, that's Canadian, obviously, FOB the feedlot, and some at 376 delivered on a dress basis. So that's going to be also a lower trend than what we would have seen last week in Western Canada. And I guess it goes back to, if you follow it through to the wholesale market, that choice cutout, a really disappointing week as we finish off. Last night it closed, the choice cutout closed just a squeak under 290. So that's $9 lower than last week, a really disappointing trend. We didn't have, any kind of much of a follow through in terms of post U.S. Thanksgiving buy, and that's showing up in the marketplace. So kind of all the way around, kind of a week we just as soon be done with.
So does we take that information and then apply it to what we're seeing from a demand perspective? Is it creating some caution and some worry in the market that we've got some demand issues here for the first quarter of 2024 ahead?
Yeah, and I think that's been, two of the things that came out of that bearish on feed report back on October the 1st, and then as well as, a disappointing cutout pointing to some demand struggle. So I think both of those things are kind of, it's part of it's supply and part of it's demand, but both of them are causing some concerns. And I think, and don't forget, Shaun, when we talk about retail prices, it's a bit of a lag. So for example, let's maybe just circle around to this one, StatsCan did release retail meat prices for October here in Canada, and prices are certainly on the beef side well off of what they were last month, but they're still high. So for example, in October beef prices, this is a national retail average from StatsCan, we're still up 10% from last year. So that's what our consumers are seeing compared to last year. But Shaun, that price is down 12% from September. And looking back, July, August, and September were all over $22 a kg for our average price on a variety of cuts. And we were down this past in October to 1963. So maybe some relief coming, but maybe consumers have already said, too high, I'm going to switch to something else, especially when pork, is same price as last year, but still well below last month as well.
Yeah, you got to think that probably there's some fingers crossed on the beef side that we do start to see some interest rate cuts in 24 to really help alleviate some of that affordability pressure that will really kind of maybe spark some people to, hey, let's barbecue some beef again, right? I think that's one of the things happening in the background from a wish perspective. Let's talk about, I think you wanted to talk about also bread cattle prices.
Yeah, a couple of things. So on just to kind of finish off, we're getting close to the end of 23. It does look like Canada's cow kill is going to end up pretty close to 10% larger than last year. So remember, our herd gets smaller, so when we kill more, that's pretty obvious what's going on there in terms of overall a smaller cow herd, which we'll talk about next year. But I do think for those, that were maybe forced to cull a few more cows than they were hoping, it is showing up as some, the bred cattle sales that we are seeing in Western Canada are showing up with some good prices on the good quality bred stock. So for those buyers that are looking, that have the feed, have the wherewithal, are looking to replace, that market is certainly stronger than we've seen in many years.
It seems like we've been talking about this for a while. Unfortunately. Okay, live cattle exports. What stats can say in there?
Yeah, lots. We had a big month in October. All the classes of exports were up. And again, I think it just shows you we had, our supply was up and we saw more cattle, moving south and north. It's kind of funny, both directions. But let's go through the categories. Fed cattle exports in October up 14%. Year to date, they're up 11, and we're sitting at about 290,000 head for the year in the 10 months. Slaughter cows in October, we did export more cows, 14% more like the fat cattle, but year to date we're still down 17. Packers in Canada have worked hard to keep the cows here to process here, but we had such a big number coming to town in October, they went both directions. So about 120,000 cows have been exported so far this year. Feeder cattle, we did see a big jump in October, about 3 times what we did last year, but last year was tiny. Year to date, we're still down about 25%. 111,000 feeder cattle have gone south. And we got to, of course, talk about both. When you talk about feeder cattle imports, they were down a wee bit in October, or they're expected to be down a wee bit, but we're still up 9% year to date, and it's sitting at about 245,000 head of feeders coming north. So quick math, we're obviously still a net importer of feeder cattle for 10 months so far in 2023.
Yeah, and the other piece of that too, because right now there's a lot of focus on the U.S. trade deficit. Canada, strong purchaser of U.S. beef, period, and always has been. So there's a lot of trade going both ways. You just can't focus on one number and jump to conclusions.
Exactly. Yeah, they're a customer, and we're in their top tier in terms of their biggest customers for beef.
Yeah, back to the argument of the integrated market for sure. Okay, and have yourself a great weekend, and we'll talk to you in a couple weeks.
Okay, thanks, Shaun. Talk soon.
Okay, we'll be right back on RealAg Radio. We've got the RealAg Issues Panel. Dave Carey is going to join us from CCG to give us an update on some of the shenanigans in the Senate on Bill C-234. You're listening to RealAg Radio.
Peter Johnson at WheatPete, RealAgriculture.com. I'm the host of The Word, and I love doing The Word. I love the questions. I love the challenges. I love having to apply agronomics to all over the globe and areas outside of my normal jurisdiction. Also, I love the feedback the most, where growers challenge me, tell me about their plot results, help me to learn. The Word, absolutely the best part of my day.
Joining me now for today's Product Spotlight is Chris Turco. He's the CEO of FP Genetics. What sets your company apart from other Western Canada seed companies?
I think what sets us apart really is our people. We're a privately held company that is owned by over 170 farmers in Western Canada. It happens to be farmers that have a shared passion for new varieties, a shared passion for evaluating varieties on their farm, choosing the best genetics for their farm, and they happen to love producing seed and offering those varieties to their neighbors in their community. And then our staff, most of our staff is kind of mid-career, and they've been involved in seed from day one, right from our R&D group where we are evaluating varieties on a regional level for farmers, right through to our sales team, like I said, where half of them are still on the farm.
All right, there's a lot of exciting stuff out there and some big decisions to make for 2024. So always nice to have good options, and always great to have you on the show, Chris.
Thank you very much, Lyndsey.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio for the RealAg Issues Panel. Listen, are you seeking professional advice for your farm and business? MMP's team of agriculture specialists cover it all. From business planning and tax guidance to financial projections, farm succession, and risk management, visit mmp.ca to connect with experts today. Okay, let's dig in here on the big issues of the week. We also have a special guest for this segment as well. Let's bring in the panel first. Kelvin Heppner coming out of Altona, Manitoba, who's enjoying a bit of an extended fall.
Yeah, exactly. This week has been surprisingly warm in much of Western Canada. And you, Shaun, and I believe our special guest on the panel today will appreciate this. There were golf courses open yesterday in Manitoba we're in December here, almost into the middle of December, and there were golf courses open.
Kelvin, this is terrible. This is obviously climate change. I think we need to put the carbon tax up to $300 per metric ton.
You had to connect those dots, hey?
Well, come on. Okay. Yeah, it's good to see. You know what? We have a very short golf season in Canada, so any extra rounds that Canadians can get in, I'm on top of for. Okay, Lyndsey Smith coming out of Ottawa, Ontario, our nation's capital. She's very close to that hot air that's been coming out of there this week.
It's not working, though, because we are in a winter wonderland, and I have a foot of snow on the ground, and it's not going anywhere. So there are no golf courses open unless they are doing cross-country skiing. But yes, there is a distinct warmth coming from the bubble just to my east.
Yeah, I saw some aerial shots. There's no snow around the center.
Weird, right?
No snow. It all melted.
Yeah,
how that happened.
Amazing.
Okay.
Perhaps we should tax them. Okay, anyway.
Okay, let's bring in our guest here to shed some light on one of the biggest issues of the week, or the big news stories of the week, Bill C-234. That is Dave Carey, great friend of the program. He is Vice President for CCGA, for Government and Industry Relations, also the co-chair of the Agriculture Carbon Alliance. Dave, great to have you back here.
And thanks, Shaun. Thanks, everyone, for having me. It's been an interesting couple weeks here in Parliament Hill, and looking forward to unpacking it a little bit with the panel. And my office. I'm at home today. My office is one block south of that bubble that Lyndsey was referring to. So it's right there.
Yeah. Okay, Dave, you've been in the middle of this, close to the action, doing a lot of work in front and behind the scenes. We saw Senator Delfon's amendment pass. Is 234 dead at this point, or is there still something to rally around?
Yeah, it's not dead, but it's definitely on life support. It's amazing when you look at it. Maybe we can unpack it a little bit. Like, this did not get politicized until committee stage in the Senate. Like, this went through a minority government, the House of Commons, without this becoming really a conservative bill or an anti-carbon tax bill. It wasn't until the bill passed second reading, was referred to the Senate Standing Committee on Agriculture and Forestry, this got politicized. The issue now is that we already have one amendment. We know Senator Wu moved an amendment that will be voted on next Tuesday. Again, these are all amendments that have already been debated in both the House of Commons Agriculture Committee, the Senate Agriculture Committee. The Senate as a whole did defeat Delfon's amendment the first time. Then he reintroduced it, and we lost by one vote the second time. So really, any additional amendments don't matter. Now it'll be, once it passes third reading in the Senate, it'll be sent back to the House of Commons, and the House of Commons has to decide. The problem with that is that it gets treated, it goes to the bottom of the order of precedence. So that means that it takes a long time to sort of come back up. So there's a lot of things that we can do to trade that place back up, which I'm confident it will be. But given how much political capital this government has put into defeating this bill, very concerned that this is going to sort of languish in the House of Commons and will never kind of fully be dealt with. And it's unfortunate because they're playing politics with farmers.
Yeah, definitely testing the resolve of even the strongest supporters of 234, I would imagine. Kelvin, you've been covering this story day to day. Questions for Dave?
Yeah, I don't know. To me, I guess we've seen this amendment. Delfon's amendment would, change the bill. We also have Senator Wu's amendment that was proposed last night that would reduce the sunset from 8 years to 3 years. Delfon's earlier removed barns and buildings. So is there something that, if this goes back to the House of Commons, is like Shaun asked, is there a way that the industry should still rally around saving what's left, or do you ask parliamentarians, the elected parliamentarians in the House of Commons, to revert back to the original bill and send it back to the Senate in its original form?
Yeah, no, exactly what you just described. So this, because it's a private member's bill, the same sort of bill in the Senate is called a public bill, but it's a private member's bill. So it's from the House of Commons. The House of Commons already duly passed it. So whenever they finally get done with their amendment, kind of tomfoolery, it'll be sent back to the House of Commons, and the House of Commons can decide to accept or reject. So our ask to parliamentarians and our members of parliament would be to reject the amendments. You've already duly passed this bill whole. We are now working to make sure that the support we had previously still remains. Obviously, we know the Conservatives are supportive. We had a very positive meeting, Scott Ross, my co-chair, and I, with Alistair McGregor, the NDP agriculture critic, yesterday. And from his opinion, nothing's changed from their perspective. So we're in the process of setting up the same sort of meeting with the Bloc. And we are meeting with some Liberals that we know are supportive of the bill next week as well. All we're trying to do is make sure that, because it's become so politicized, that if there is the opportunity for the House of Commons to revisit this bill, that they look at the bill based on its merits and not the politicization that's happened in both the House and Senate. So yeah, when we get to that point, it'll be about asking members of Parliament to support it. Again, parliamentarians in the House would have to reverse their previous position for us to not have to support it. And there potentially could be a few more Liberals that support it too, because we all seen the polls. And if I was a rural MP from any party, I would certainly be concerned with not supporting this legitimate piece of legislation.
Seems like a pretty easy piece of legislation to support. I mean, there's a sunset clause of 8 years. We're not writing something in concrete that we're going to say, look at circa 2023 for the next couple hundred years, Lyndsey. Lyndsey, questions for Dave?
So, yeah, on the politicizing side, I guess, I think one of the most unfortunate things with this is that realistically, I think part of the reason it's been so politicized is because of the Atlantic Canada carve out for heating oil, which is, so I guess my question to you, Dave, is in the conversations that you're having with, MPs, senators, these sorts of things, and on the lobbying side, is there a recognition within, the House that this was in the works long before? As far as do some of the senators understand that this isn't an add-on to the Atlantic Canada carve-out? This was in the works long before?
I'd say most do. Again, and what's really frustrating is that I'm confident that if this bill in its original form was put in front of the entire Senate, and the entire Senate actually deigned to show up and actually be in the red chamber, that we have the votes to support the bill. So it's incredibly frustrating, and I think most members of Parliament, they understand fully, because they already went through this. They voted on it. Senators, for oftentimes, they don't really start dealing with things until it's referred to them, and I get it. That makes sense. They don't necessarily track the House of Commons that closely. So I'd say most senators understand that. You have the ideologues, that are the ones that are being obstructionists, the ones that are putting up what it really amount to procedural amendments. None of this is about the merit. Senator Dalphon, Senator Wu, Senator Monsian. Senator Monsian introduced an amendment and then on the record said she didn't have any information about the bill, and yet she knew enough to propose an amendment to remove the ordering council provision on a sunset clause. And Senator Monsian refused to meet with ACA. Her office confirmed a week and a half ago that they will never meet with us. They will never honor a meeting with us. Senator Monsian was set to meet with the Canola Growers Board of Directors, Farmer Board. She canceled the day before. So we're seeing that some senators don't want information, and that leads to the idea that this is not what happened in the Senate. Was not organic. It wasn't a couple environmentally focused senators that went to bat on this. In 2014, when Trudeau was the leader of the opposition, he removed the Liberal senators from caucus. And he got some points for that, for sure, at the time. There's the perennial discussions around reform or abolish the Senate come up. They were happening at that time, and he got some great media coverage for a month or two after doing that. But the hypocrisy is that he still has a government representative office in the Senate, the GRO, which is led by Senator Gold and Senator Labakane-Benson. As soon as this bill got referred to the Senate Agriculture Committee, and both the House and Senate Agriculture Committees are usually the most constructive, least partisan committees that you have in either place. They work well together. It's about farming. It's about agriculture. This is not the trade committee or the finance committee where the politics of the day tend to play out. Senator Wu and Senator Dalphon, downtown Montreal, downtown Vancouver, made themselves members of that committee when 234 was referred to it. Clearly, again, this doesn't look like things that happen organically. And then I think really where the politicization really started was that during clause by clause, the deputy leader of the government's representative in the Senate, Senator Labakane-Benson from Alberta, appeared only for clause by clause to vote in favor of all the amendments. She didn't hear one piece of testimony, did not meet with anyone about it. The GRO takes its orders from the PMO. So the idea that there has not been direct political interference in this is simply laughable. There has been. And the fact that when there was motions to adjourn continuously, and there was a lot of questions around points of privilege and senators being bullied, and again, that's up for them to deal with, and the Speaker has dealt with that, I believe. When they adjourned, the Prime Minister then swore in 5 new senators. So, this is intentional to delay and obfuscate the bill. The politics at play in the Senate are very real. They're just not as overt as they are in the House of Commons.
So that feels sorry, but that feels a little overt. No, it feels a little overt.
This is not conspiracy theory stuff.
These are facts.
Exactly what happened.
Yeah,
you're not
exactly.
even say that you're appointing independent senators when one of them ran for the Liberals 3 or 4 times federally and lost. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, but either they're the Conservatives just own that their senators are partisan, right? And at least then you know where they're going to go. It's predictable. You can work with them as a party. Having Liberal senators that wear a different name tag or identify a different group, I find it to be quite hypocritical. And I think hypocrisy is what drives Canadians the most nuts about politics, right? It's not the whatever, it's the hypocrisy. Do as I say, not as I do, sort of thing. So,
Kelvin?
Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault also admitted to having talked to some of the senators as well, right, about this policy?
Yeah, our board was in town. The Canola Growers Board was in town November 7th for our annual lobby day, and we left a Senate office. One of our teams left a Senate office, or I guess when they entered the Senate office, the senator told us that Minister Guilbeault had just called them. So again, and we understand Minister Guilbeault and Minister Wilkinson. There's been talk in the House that the Prime Minister picked up the phone. I don't know. But I know Senator Gold, Senator Labakane-Benson, the Prime Minister's office are certainly calling senators. They did the same thing with Larry Maguire's bill, but this has become a proxy for the next election. So they're doing it with much more fervor. I've never seen this amount of political capital spent on a private member's bill from either the government of the day or the official opposition, right? The House stuff was supposed to be done, and now it's entirely back in the House of Commons sort of partisan bubble.
And back to your original thought, Dave, this is a private member's bill. It came from Conservative Ben Lobb, but there's bipartisan support. The NDP, the Green Party, the partisan, the accusation that this is somehow some sort of conservative climate carve out that's supported by the Greens. There's a lot of things around this that when you actually get into even not the deep nuance, just the second tier of details sort of describe what has really gone on here. I have described some of these actions and the political capital that has been spent on this. I've described it as the Liberals showcasing disdain for our industry. One person said to me yesterday, contempt. There's probably a lot of different words we can use. How do you feel, before we wrap up here, Dave, how do you feel in terms of, as an agriculture industry as a whole, asking for an 8-year carve out or exemption here while we try to deal with some of these challenges around the technology and the innovation the government keeps on talking about? How should we feel about this? What should be the feeling in the gut of our stomach?
Yeah, maybe, we do a positive side before the more doom and gloom is that I think as an agriculture industry, one, we should be proud of how the industry came together, because we've never come together in this way. I've been in the agriculture sector since 2009, I suppose, but when I started in politics, but we've never seen a bill or a policy or a piece of legislation or an idea that has galvanized the Canadian farming community like Bill C-234. We've never had a group like ACA that brings every supply managed commodity, every export oriented commodity together around the same table to work constructively together. If you look at the members page of ACA, Dairy Farmers of Canada, cattle, pork, chicken, canola, grain growers. So one, I think it shows that, what we've accomplished, I think, is something that should be noted, that when we come together and we don't divide amongst ourselves, there's no wedge issue here. This isn't Bill C-282, all other sorts of things. So I think a takeaway is that when agriculture comes together, this was always going to be a tough long shot. A bill in a minority government where the Liberals, the government of the day, has run 3 consecutive elections on carbon pricing and won. Maybe that's because our first past the post system. But I think farmers in the agriculture community should be very disheartened at the way that they've been treated, the way they've been litigated. It's particularly in the Senate. The House of Commons was actually much more kind to farmers than the Senate has been. This notion of this only impacts a small amount of emissions, therefore it doesn't matter. This notion that farmers are doing fine. This notion that, the carbon price is something that is infallible, as opposed to looking at it. The government's shown with the Atlantic Canada exemptions that it can bend, and that nuanced public policy is about understanding that there's some cases it doesn't work, and there's some cases it does, which is why we're asking for 8 years. And for Senator Wu to then want to reduce that to 3 years, Bill 234, it'll be 2 years in February we were working on this bill. And then it was 2 years before that Bill 206 was in play, and it got all the way to the Senate before the 2021 election. So, again, I would say that I would hope that farmers and agriculture leaders, wherever you are, hold your elected officials to account, but also your senators. Senators are appointed to represent the interests of their province. That's how our system works. And a lot of senators from places that have agriculture as a huge part of that economy, like Alberta, did not show up for farmers. And I think that's something that should be concerning. And I think it's that I think Canadian farmers and agriculture is taken for granted, right? It is just the expectation is they'll continue to grow, they'll continue to do it. And if any other sector was treated like this, it would be, an existential crisis. The auto sector would never be treated the way that the farming sector is treated in Canada, despite us being bigger than auto and aerospace combined. So disappointed, I guess, but I would point to what you said earlier, Shaun, really pleased to see that the House of Commons really came out in support of farmers. Yes, it was a narrow vote, but the Conservatives, the Bloc, the Green Party, the Independents all came together to support farmers. And it's the Senate that didn't. And there is I believe MP Chong raised it. This is a tax policy, and the Senate technically does not have remit over taxation or spending, right? They rubber stamp budgets. They get mad about BIAs because they put in policy that they want to actually discuss, but the Senate does not have spending or taxation powers. So Michael Chong brought up a really interesting point during his debate last week of this is really again, there'll be first and second year political science undergrad courses in Canada taught about Bill 234, right? I've been an undergrad poli-sci, and this will be a case study that students will have to unpack. And the fact that they're going after farmers who poll better than any other profession, it's just wild. It's very short-sighted from the Liberals, I would say. They are going to get decimated in rural Canada because this is it feels very anti-farmer, anti-rural Canada right now. And that's it's a really weird group to kind of double down to go against, right? It's a really strange group to pick a fight with, especially this late in a minority government. 135 constituted votes started last night. And again, it's a really weird fight to pick, I'd suggest, Shaun.
Yeah, I appreciate that perspective, Dave. Indeed. We've been talking to Dave Carey. He is Vice President of Government and Industry Relations, also the co-chair of Agriculture Carbon Alliance, VP with the Canadian Canola Growers Association. Dave, thanks a lot for joining us here today on the show. Appreciate it, bud.
Thanks for having me. Okay,
we're going to be right back on RealAg Radio. We got a bunch of more issues to tackle with the panel. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147. Now we'll be joined by Heather Watson, Executive Director with Farm Management Canada. Give us an update on what are some of the things that Farm Management Canada is up to? What are some of the things you're doing right now to move the needle?
Yeah, so we're doing a combination of, I would say, research and education and connection in the industry. So on the research side, we've just launched the results of our Farm Women study, which is super exciting, some really interesting insights that we'll discuss. And on the education and training, of course, you mentioned this conference. We have workshops in financial literacy. We have workshops in bridging the gap with farm transition, as well as some interesting kind of risk management activities. How do we look at what's happening in the changing business environment? How do we take a proactive approach? And what are all the connections we can make to the various aspects of business management? So it's a bit of a step-by-step, elephant one bite at a time approach.
Heather, keep up the great work at Farm Management Canada, and thank you so much. Join Western Canadian farmers, industry leaders, and experts at Crossroads Crop Conference from January 29th to the 31st in Calgary. As we examine big picture innovation in agriculture, for tickets and details, visit crossroadscropconference.ca. Okay, let's get back to some other issues with the RealAg Issues Panel. Kelvin Heppner, Lyndsey Smith, and myself, Shaun Haney, all of Real Agriculture. diving into the biggest issues of the week. Kelvin, good news story. Let's move on to good news. We've sort of covered some of the bad gamut here earlier with Dave Carey from CCGA. India is making some changes to their tariffs on peas. What's happening?
Yeah, this is something that we haven't seen this tariff on peas has been in effect since 2017, I believe. And yesterday, the Indian government posted a notice saying that it's planning to drop, at least temporarily, its import duty. It's a 50% import duty, so prohibitive on imports when it comes to dry peas. And yesterday, the notice was posted saying that they plan to drop that duty until the end of March 2024. So just a few months, at least for now. But this is the way India often does things, just a few months at a time. There is an election coming up in India in spring. And so there's maybe a bit of surprise that they did with the timing of this, given that in the past, these types of import duties are used to appease the farm vote, which is enormous in India. But I know Pulse Canada, they're still trying to find more information on just to confirm the details of this. But it looks like that tariff that's been in effect since 2017 is now off or will be off for the next few months. And this is obviously great news, as India is a major market customer in the past, the largest global customer of pulses from Western Canada.
Is there any possibility this is like an olive branch? Canada maybe don't talk as much about the assassination that happened?
Oh, I don't think that's the way India's politics work. I think this is just out of necessity. There's some talk about weather trouble with their crop, and it'll have to do more with these types of decisions are driven completely by supply and demand domestically.
Mm-hmm.
Lyndsey, it was interesting. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, and the politics of their people,
Yeah,
right? So India,
right. Yeah.
it's making sure their people are fed, and when they need imports, then this is what happens. And usually to gain some political favor as well. So, but yeah, it really has. I don't think it's going to have any impact on the Canadian relationship.
So, Lyndsey, I found this interesting. Is that big brands that we know that distribute food or sell food, or what we call food, have a number of different ways to tackle the market. And the same thing's happening in hotels. Actually, there's a story in the Wall Street Journal talking about how hotel brands are fragmenting the segments to the extent that nobody even knows what they're staying at this point. Found it interesting. McDonald's, they say they're launching a new small store format named CosMc. I think is what we're going with there.
Yeah.
So starting this weekend ahead of its original schedule, the fast food giant plans to open 10 CosMc locations by the end of 2024. These essentially are like specialty beverage stores, almost like competing with Starbucks directly, the kiosk kind of formats. Fascinating in terms of what this looks like.
I guess it is interesting and sort of, I guess an extension of where, not that long ago, a Tim Hortons and a McDonald's and a Starbucks were very different restaurants, whereas they've all sort of kind of become the same thing, right? So now you can get, full meals at all of them, and you can also get specialty coffees at all of them. And so I'm actually maybe most surprised. Beyond the name, I think the name is terrible. But I may be most surprised that they're only going to open 10. I feel like McDonald's doesn't do things like that. I feel like they should be opening 1,000, and then we'll see how it goes. But I guess it all comes down to location, right? So where would we see these? Is this like in shopping malls? Is this on corner stores? Is this where are we putting these? Or are they in hotels or those sorts of things? Because that may be, you see that a lot. You see Starbucks in hotels. Is this McDonald's looking at sort of that sort of way, or in downtowns? It just also seems odd. I don't know, maybe this is my Canadian bent, but we do drive-through. That's what we do. So to me, it's what is this going to look like? You go through and you get your coffee in a drive-through and you keep going. You don't necessarily, you're not walking around and grabbing coffee kind of thing. So I don't know. It's a pretty crowded space. So we'll see how it goes.
This isn't the same thing, but I know when I was in Toronto a couple summers ago, there was a McDonald's off Queen Street where it was basically walk up. At night, we're all standing outside at a drive-through window, but there was no cars. It was basically a walk up. Now, on the name, there's an explanation for CosMc, and I know you're interested.
Do tell. Yes, I am.
Okay, so the name CosMc is a nod to a space alien character featured in the McDonald's ads in the 1980s. So This move follows McDonald's recent success with the Grimace birthday meal, which went viral in June, tapped into nostalgia and all this kind of stuff. So it refers to a character from the 80s. I don't remember that.
I was going to say, Shaun, we are probably just a little too young for it, but like I don't remember that. Like maybe I'd have to see a picture of it. Maybe
it does show you the money that can be made off of specialty drinks. There's market in those,
and bringing back something like Grimace, who like he's a triangle, a purple triangle. I don't understand.
Not who Grimace was. Okay, sorry, go.
They are talking 27,000 locations by 50,000 restaurants by 2027. So they do have big targets for this. But I do wonder, this kind of takes away like half of the reason for going to McDonald's. So is this just going to cannibalize sales to McDonald's itself? I don't know. To me, it kind of sounds like something that some MBAs at McDonald's headquarters came up with the idea, and they needed to come up with something to shake things up. I'm guessing revenues are maybe stale or something like that, and they just came up with something. And I don't know. Do you think
can we get really controversial though?
In 3 years?
Yeah.
So controversial.
Tim Hortons versus McDonald's coffee.
There's no controversy.
Tim Hortons is terrible.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't think you guys would be so on side.
Are you on that train too, Kelvin?
Yeah.
Kelvin's pro McDonald's.
For sure. So Tim Hortons is coming to our small town right now, and I've really questioned the timing of this. And I don't mean to throw the investors, whoever they are, under the bus either. But like, you could just open a side window out of any building in town and sell better coffee. And take that to business without the franchise fee. So it's something we've talked about lately.
Kelvin, can you please, out of your garage, like just cut a hole on the side and just put a drive-through sign? It's good to go.
Hey, it's sort of like, remember in Coming to America, McDougal's? Like that's
that's what this feels like. Oh, that was a great movie. Okay.
Much for Tim Hortons advertising on RealAg.
So much. No, we're pumping McDonald's tires because they need it, guys.
They're
really struggling.
I don't get our fascination with Tim Hortons coffee. Now, I will say this, full stop. We're really hitting the heavy issues here, but
we really are.
I will say this, full stop. Tim Hortons' food they have really improved it.
They have, yes.
Sandwiches are fantastic. Yep. We have one right beside our office. I go there all the time. I have the turkey classic with no tomato. I avoid the coffee, though. I'll say that.
Everybody knows Shaun's order now. Anyway, I will tell you that I will get coffee at either of them. And my biggest beef, I like McDonald's coffee. It's not always hot enough. I like very hot coffee. And Tim Hortons is always hot enough. So there you go.
More of a Verona dark roast kind of person at Starbucks. Okay, with an extra shot of espresso. Okay, let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to do more on the RealAg Issues panel right after this.
What's next for your fields? At Pioneer, delivering industry-leading genetics drives everything we do. From the scientists in the lab to our local teams with boots on the ground. We are determined to get there first. Developing top-performing products, proven in more growing conditions than ever before. Pioneer. What's next happens here. Visit pioneer.com/Canada to learn more.
I get to spend every day talking to farmers in the ag industry through RealAgriculture.com and RealAg Radio. But nothing is more fun than speaking to an audience live and in person. If you're planning an ag event, book a Real Agriculture speaker to make it a successful and memorable experience. Email shaney@realagriculture.com and you can book myself or any other Real Ag personality to speak at your event. Bring your audience all the fun, insight, and energy of Real Agriculture. Co-ops Grown with Purpose recognizes how your farm brings sustainability, agronomics, and safety to our food, community, and environment. What you do matters. Make it count. Contact your local co-op Grow team member to learn more. Shaun Haney, Lyndsey Smith, Kelvin Heppner, all of Real Agriculture breaking down the biggest issues of the week. Kelvin, you've been following this Buhler ownership story. What's the latest here? What is, and maybe bring us all in the loop. Buhler is trying to find new investors, correct?
Yes, exactly. Buhler has been searching since summer publicly. They've been searching for a new long-term investor. And so this is the company that makes versatile tractors, Farm King equipment as well. They have manufacturing facilities here in Manitoba. They've kind of consolidated all their other manufacturing facilities in Minnesota, North Dakota, Alberta. But they've been looking for a new investment partner. And in many ways, the thought is that this could potentially be a new owner. They had a deadline of December 4th from their credit facility that expired on December 4th, and we received notice earlier this week that had been extended to today. December 8th is the deadline on basically their operating loan or their main credit facility. So that's where we're expecting some news here potentially in the next couple days as to the future of Bühler. This is a company that is 96 or 97% owned by RealAg, which is a Russian manufacturer, the largest Russian equipment manufacturer. And so there's been some calls over the last, since Russia invaded Ukraine and back in 2014 when Russia invaded Crimea, there were calls for sanctions against this company and its owners specifically. There haven't been any at this point, but as positions become entrenched with the war and Russia versus the West and Russia versus NATO and so on, this could potentially be a situation where the Russian owners are looking to get out of this company, or maybe the leadership here in North America is looking to separate themselves from Russia. So, but it's expected, or there would looks like there's some signs that we could see some action here in terms of new ownership potentially coming forward. There's no word on who this new owner could be, but we do know that again this credit facility expires today. So
it's got to be the Saudis. They're buying everything else. John Rahm with the Live Tour, like European football. Why not?
Sports lately, the Saudis are into sports everywhere. But yeah, I don't know if the Saudis. I don't know. There'd potentially be some Asian, Japanese manufacturers that might come to mind too. India would have some potential players too. So in the past, Bühler and Kubota have had a working agreement together where Bühler has built some tractors for Kubota. So those have all been candidates, but you'd think that Kubota would have already been approached before this public search for a new investor.
Lyndsey, could you imagine you woke up this morning and somebody had said, Lyndsey, come play golf on our tour. Nobody will be there, but we're going to give you like $300 to $600 million is the rumor. Like, I find it's like I can't even get my head wrapped around. Like, what would I do this morning if that happened?
Well, I would say no because I don't golf. So I guess I should start golfing because apparently it's very lucrative. No, I'm just kidding. I would learn how to golf very quickly.
Go work for the Saudi version of RealAg.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know what the Saudi version is, but we should look into that.
I think I could work for the Saudi version because all I've talked about is drought for the past 4 years.
That's true.
It would be like the weather forecast, hot and dry. I'm very used to seeing.
Yeah, here's the wind blowing. Ta-da! Yeah, yeah, it's wild.
How many sheep would you buy?
Oh, all of them. Yeah,
you pretty much could.
I could buy the entire Canadian flock. Just move them over there. 1 million sheep.
Well, you know what? This week, Real Agri Studies, we put a new survey out to our RealAg Insights panel, and I'm looking forward to the results. This survey is all about farmers' perceptions, sentiment, attitudes around farm groups, and it was really interesting. I've been talking to some farm groups about this. This kind of came all about because I think a lot of farmers are talking about the future of farm groups, and I think a lot of farm groups are talking about the future of what they look like, trying to serve their members and their checkoff payers, in the case of checkoff orgs, even better into the future. And I hopefully this info will kind of bring people together, Lyndsey, a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to see sort of where this all shakes out and, you know, what producer groups then do with this information as well. So I took the survey. I know several other people that did, and I think we did a really great job of providing a lot of options to be able to rank, you know, what we prioritize, what we think our producer groups are doing well at. And I'm really excited to see sort of this cross section of, you know, it's pretty comprehensive to be able to sort of, without having to get like super specific, and nobody is, you know, if you got an axe to grind, whatever, sure. But it's just a really, I don't know, I think it's a great way to sort of weigh in on where we need perhaps some improvement, but where we're doing well, and sort of hope to see how this sort of shapes things going forward, because I think there's just so much that our producer groups do, and at times I think it's difficult to maybe be as involved as you want to be or need to be, and it's a way to have your voice heard for sure.
Well, hey, we had Dave Carey from CCGA on the show earlier. You heard the passion around trying to make Bill 234 happen. That passion doesn't exist if there's not checkoff dollars going into groups like CCGA to make all this happen, Kelvin.
Oh, exactly. And this is where it's an evolving situation because of all the change. Like, we have consolidation at the farm level, and there's been consolidation in the farm group level as related to that, or kind of at the same time simultaneously. And I think, I'm also looking forward to seeing the results of this. This is stuff that we follow pretty closely, having attended meetings for all of these farm groups across the country many times, and pay pretty close attention to membership involvement, and there's different ways of raising money. Some of these organizations are completely voluntary memberships. Some are through a mandatory checkoff, but it's refundable and that type of thing. So the future of farm groups is something that's certainly fascinating, and I think it's only going to continue to evolve to adapt to what farmers want, but it's a matter of whether it adapts fast enough before membership declines or people aren't satisfied. So the results, I hope, are meaningful in terms of informing farm groups as to what farmers are looking for, and I'm looking forward to seeing the results.
Speaking of results, what happened in the Leaf Senators game last night?
I don't want to talk about it.
Thank you. First of all, who cheers for a team named after what we've seen from the Senate the last few weeks?
They were named that a long time ago. Okay?
I think we should call them the Ottawa Shenanigans.
Ottawa tomfoolery. They need a name change. Actually, we've got the women's team that doesn't have a name yet, as far as I understand. So maybe they'll go with something a little better.
Oh, no?
Do they have a name? No, I haven't.
And that's the new Women's Pro League that Brian Burke is the president of.
Yes, that's right. Who was on Real Agriculture? You may remember, Shaun.
He actually announced, if I remember right, we were like one of the first outlets that got that scoop. That he
announced that he was going to be
CEO of that group.
Yeah, so super exciting, and they start playing January 1, I guess. Yeah.
What arena are they playing out of?
So here in Ottawa, they'll be in the same arena that the 67s play out of. So at TD Place. Yeah. So it's attached to where the Red Blacks play. There's an arena there. It's a really nice arena. And the 67s do really well here too. They always have a great crowd. I actually know people that probably go to 67 games a lot more than Sens games, but the team is doing better now. And so now we can.
Way cheaper.
It's way cheaper. Yeah. It is. Although, like the Sens have done.
We haven't talked about the score from last year.
No, I don't think we need to, Kelvin. I think, as you'll notice, we're moving past that. The Leafs won. Okay. And you did have to get a new goalie, but not a Zamboni driver. So that's cool.
Yeah.
Good for you guys.
Yeah.
Not this time. Yeah. Anyway, I will just say that, Kelvin, congratulations on your win. But I'm just going to put out there, and this is all of my sports analysis in one. I would like a new coach for the Sens. So I'm just going to put that out there.
Flame won last night. I would like a new roster. That's.
I think that's a tall order. I think I'm going to get my.
This is like the Flames of 23 are the Flames of the night. They are just like winning enough to be above terrible, and it just drags it out, and like they're not good. I'm in that category. Sorry to be so negative about it. Okay. Hey, that's all we have today. We're out of time, unfortunately. Really appreciate everybody joining us here today. Kelvin, have yourself a great weekend. Try to get around to golfing.
I don't know about that. We'll probably be at the hockey rink, but might go to the rink in shorts if these temperatures keep up. Everyone have a good weekend. Thank you.
I think you should. Absolutely. And Lyndsey, I know you're in a bit of a winter wonderland. Stay warm.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
If you have any feedback on today's show, you are more than welcome to send us an email, shaney@realagriculture.com, or call the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. Thanks, everybody, for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Radio. We'll chat again on Monday. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you for downloading this episode of the RealAg Radio podcast, brought to you by the BC Centre for Agritech Innovation at Simon Fraser University, your go-to for advancing agritech. Ready to elevate your farm business? Achieve the productivity and profitability you're looking for with Agritech Development Program. Google SFU Agritech Innovation to learn more.